Hey, what's up guys? My name is Hobby. Welcome to Unconventional Media. Today we're going to be talking about the Canon C70 versus the Fuji X-T4. Let's go ahead and start off by saying this is not a fair comparison, but I want to talk about these two cameras because they bring a lot of value to the filmmaking industry and also to the photography world with the Fuji X-T4. But let's go ahead and kind of talk about some points that really, as a filmmaker, is important for us, and that's going to be autofocus. I know some people don't use autofocus, but I'm one of those people that does because I do weddings primarily, and if you're a wedding filmmaker, you're probably going to want autofocus too. Makes your life a little bit easier. We're also going to talk about audio. Audio is important, and having those, important parts of being able to connect audio in different ways is, useful for filmmaking and for wedding filmmaking too as well. Now, the next and final part is going to be just usability, things that we're going to need on daily, whether it's ND filters and things like that. And also the last part is going to be which one is the right camera for you. Well, that also depends on the budget and also on what you're doing. Now let's go ahead and dive into autofocus. When it comes to the Fuji X-T4 versus the Canon C70 in that department, they're very different. For video, you have a lot more options on the Canon C70. However, the Fuji X-T4 does hold its own with autofocus. And currently I'm using the X-T4 filming this, and I have a box here around my eye, and hopefully it hasn't lost focus yet, but my experience using it, it's really great, especially in well-lit situations like I am right now doing this video, and also just filmmaking too, weddings, in reception time is really good. Usually during the, when it's dancing time during reception, I want to go ahead and go in manual focus because I want to focus on the bride and groom, and there's a lot of moving subjects, and that also goes with the Canon C70 because if not, it's going to go hunting everywhere, and you don't want that. When it comes to just using it on a daily, I tend to lean over with the Fuji X-T4 because it has a square center point, and I just stick with that. I know whatever that center point it's on, it's going to be in focus. And with the Canon C70, you have a larger square actually. It's more of a horizontal look, and whatever is in focus in that or hits that object, it starts going hunting, focusing with that, if that kind of makes sense. It does have a smaller square that you can put on the center point. However, it's like too small and not as usable, not as easy to move around like the one on the Fuji X-T4. So that really comes into play as well. Now what the Canon C70 does have, it has tracking, has face priority where it's focused here, and if I was to move out of frame, it would not hunt in the back, and if I come back to frame, it'll hunt and capture my face as long as I'm well lit instantly. And that's a really nice feature. It's kind of like having manual focus just for the face. And that person moves, well, it's not going to focus on the background. And I love that, and then that just allows smooth transitions when filming interviews, and also when just filming maybe the wedding in itself when it comes to the ceremony. That's a great way, or for speeches too, if you're zoomed in on that subject. The next thing when it comes to the audio aspects, the Canon C70 is just going to win overall. It has XLR, 2 inputs of those mini XLRs, has a stereo input, while the Fuji X-T4 just has, just a regular stereo input. You can put a splitter on it and, use 2 mics. However, with the Canon C70, you just have more options, and you have 4 channels of recording, so you can do double or a different, decibel levels to make sure that you have the audio perfectly. Has a good preamp too as well. So when it comes to audio options, you're gonna win every time with the Canon C70. With the Fuji X-T4, you're probably gonna have to use a external recorder like I am now. I'm using the Sennheiser MKE600 with the Tascam DR10X, where it's just into the XLR input and it's recording everything, and it kind of makes it a little bit easier for me. The only problem is you can't really monitor it, but that is a separate video on its own with that recorder. But just with the X-T4, you're just gonna need another device. It's not as, built for audio in that aspect. Now, when it comes to usability, when using this camera overall, one of the coolest things about the Canon C70 is having those internal ND filters. It being a cinema camera, it has an advantage over the Fuji X-T4 in every way, just about when it comes to filming. But the X-T4 holds its own. It has great image quality, But again, the usability of not having those internal ND filters, you know, plays in a role of spending a little bit more money to buy, let's say, the Peter McKinnon Polar Pro filter, variable ND, and that works really well on this camera. The only thing it does cause is a slight hue shift, and more it's like the brown tones or reddish tones, I would say. The nice thing is though, you don't get that weird X shape like you do with other non-hard stop ND filters. I used to experience that all the time. I hated it, and I was just over it so much. But now at least I can say with the Peter McKinnon one, it works really great. I use a 2 to 5. That's more the sweet spot. The 6 to 9, I've seen it get the X mark and change just more of the hue on the image itself. So in that sense, you're gonna win with the Canon C70, the built-in internal ND filters. What I do wish it was like the Sony FX6 where it had the variable ND, but at that point I'm just nitpicking. The internal ND filters are great, and once I'm at a stop, I can just dial in my aperture and get the right image exposed properly. So at the end of the day, it really comes to, you know, do you have the budget for the Canon C70? Because, you know, that features of having better audio and having internal NDs really does play a difference when you're filming weddings and just, you know, running gun situations. If you're more of a production set, you can get away with it. You can easily, you know, expose and use lighting and use different things and tools at your disposal if you do more interview style. So it really just comes to what are you using the camera for. When it comes to image quality, and this is a big one, image quality with the Fuji X-T4 is amazing. It's great. It's what helped build my business and help me take it to another level. Give you some background, I started off with Sony, and then I purchased the Sony A7 IIIs, and then afterwards I switched over to the Fuji X-T3 and now have the X-T4. And I just love Fuji. They have great colors, image quality, different codecs and recording, H.265, 420, 10-bit, and so much, you know, ProRes ability to record and stuff like that. And the image quality it produces is amazing. It's sharp, but it's digital. It looks like a digital camera, and that's not a bad thing. It could be good and bad. But when I switched over and I purchased over the Canon C70, I fell in love with the image. It's so different. The DGO sensor in that camera is perfect. I mean, it has the same sensor as the C300 Mark III, which is a $11,000 camera. And the 16 stops of dynamic range is amazing. Like for me, it was a learning curve, learning how to grade the footage and how to use it and get the way, you know, the look that I wanted. But one of the things that allows me to get the look I want is that dynamic range, you know, in combination with using the ND filters and the audio and things like that, just allowed me to use it now for a couple of shoots and just get some images that I'm just excited to start sharing. And it excites me to start creating. You know, they say that gear doesn't matter. It does matter to get the quality in the, you know, the way that you have in your head and to translate into reality. Like, it plays a role. And then having those tools built in allows you to focus more on the vision, the storyboarding, the planning, rather than focusing on the gear and the stuff that you're gonna need, because now you're having to compromise with, let's say, the Fuji X-T4 when it comes to filmmaking. And I know that budget plays a role when purchasing the right camera for you, and also the type of work that you're going to be doing. I'm still more of a hybrid shooter. This is why I still have my Fuji cameras. I have two Fuji X-T3, a Fuji X-T4, and my Canon C70. And so with these cameras, I'm able to do the work that I need to do. For more of my filmmaking stuff and commercial work and weddings now, I'm using the C70 for video. When I'm hired to do photography, I use my Fuji X-T4 and X-T3s, and I love them. The Fuji X-T4 produces a great image. If you've seen the video Comatose, this was all shot on the Fuji X-T4 using Black Pro Mist filter and some accessories like lights and haze in a can, and be able to set the atmosphere. When you know the way how to film it and how to shoot in this pre-production, you know, you're gonna get a quality image every time. It's just, as long as you know the rules, you don't need a Canon C70 to get a beautiful image. You need to learn how to light, audio, and all these other things first. However, once you mastered it and you want to take your work to another level, then that's when that right tool comes into play, and also comes to the type of work that you're doing. You know, now I'm doing a lot of commercial work, a lot of weddings, so I need a camera that can do both really well and excel on it. And so the Canon C70 is, all right, this is the way to go. However, at the end of the day, it comes to your budget. Let me know in the comments down below, which camera would you want to pick up more? Would you want to go with a hybrid camera or a, cinema camera like I did? But until then, like the video, comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.